Business bankruptcies are absolutely skyrocketing in Canada right now. So what does this mean? This is something that many of you who followed the channel for a long time know I've been warning of, and this will be a lagging thing because of the Bank of Canada's monetary policy decisions and the amount of debt on Canadian businesses' balance sheet. So Canadian business bankruptcies are absolutely skyrocketing. Just look at this chart, guys. It is insane. You have to go all the way back to 2008 to see when we got to these sort of levels. And you only have to think right now we have the Bank of Canada essentially saying that they're not going to be cutting rates. They're saying that they're going to hold rates high. And I believe them. I do think they will. Until something really bad unravels, I think they're just going to hold rates high, which is going to crush more and more small businesses that are already going bankrupt, as you can see from the chart that is on your screens right now. So it's kind of crazy that this story isn't being passed widely and isn't really being shown, but this is the reality, guys, and it's very, very sad. Lots of people are going to be losing jobs. This is something that I've prepared many of you for, saying that you must have a plan because things are going to go from bad to worse. They are not going to get better, like the mainstream media keeps saying. The interest rates are going to go down and everything's just going to get better. That everything happens with a lag. Remember that. So Canada braces for possible wave of business bankruptcies. I'm sorry, but Reuters is saying possible. I mean, just look at the chart. I mean, just put it on a 10-year chart and look at how much business bankruptcies have skyrocketed. I don't think it's possible. It's actually happening. Small firms that employ fewer than 100 people are critical to the Canadian economy as they give jobs to almost 2/3 of the country's 12 million private workers. A spike in bankruptcies, which jumped 38% in the first 11 months of 2023, would weigh on economic growth, lobby groups and economists warn. And yeah, of course, that's going to happen. And you've only got to look at other things that are happening and think, man, this is just looking so bleak for Canada right now. I mean, productivity just continues to tank right now. You look at where productivity did go, and then you look and compare Canada to the United States, as David Rosenberg points out. I think he's a great guy to follow and listen to what he says. A prominent economist says the Canadian economy is weaker than many people realize, especially compared to the US economy, which continues to benefit from fiscal stimulus. David Rosenberg, founder and president of Rosenberg Research, told Bloomberg that the Canadian economy is more fragile than the US economy, adding that population growth has worked to make Canada's economy appear to be performing better than it is. And I agree with him here. And then he goes on to talk about the stimulus programs that the US has continued to do, like the CHIPS Act, which was introduced in 2022 to enhance semiconductor manufacturing. He also talks about while the US is a large and closed economy, Canada's, by contrast, is small and open. As a result, he said the Canadian economy is more impacted by international events, which have a big impact on Canada because we're 3 times more sensitive to the global economy than the US. So you've only got to think about that with what's happening in the EU and the Chinese economy, which he points to here. So you've got deflation happening in China. You've got the Chinese economy that is unraveling, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, real estate bubbles in the world in China unraveling. You've got Canada's real estate closely tied to that. It's almost on an IV line when you look at what we covered on Monday with what's happening with the massive amount of fraudulent buyers that are coming in from mainland China and all that. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. But this is kind of crazy because you only have to look at the wage growth in Canada and compare it to the United States to realize that the economy is much weaker in Canada than in the United States. So wage growth did get to around 10% with all the stimulus programs and nonsense that the government did back in 2020. So we can't really use that. So just forget about this point here and just look at the average. And the average is between 2 and 4%, which is right where we are right now. So it's really not beating inflation. And I've talked about that many times, that people are losing. They don't even realize because these CPI numbers that we get are completely distorted and are completely fake. The reality is people are losing money. Their wages are actually shrinking in Canada. And if you compare that to the United States has seen much more robust growth. I mean, they saw nearly 15% income boost at the top and height of the stimulus, and it hasn't really dropped below 5% until you go back to 2020. So it's kind of crazy the amount of growth that you've had in wages in the United States, which we all know about it, because if you work in skilled industries or trades, you will know that now there is a massive gap between what you earn in Canada and what you can potentially earn in the United States. That gap has grown exponentially over the past couple of years. So with all that growth as well, it means the US is also sucking up even more global talent. More global talent is going to head to the United States in chase of better wages, better living standards than in Canada, where we have like negative wages and we have a stagnating economy. We have business bankruptcy skyrocketing, and we've just had what happened with the CBA loans, and that's going to hit within the next couple of months. What do you think is going to happen to this chart that we're looking at here? Do you think it's going to go up or down? I think we all know it's going to absolutely skyrocket. So more and more people, unfortunately, are losing their job, and it's just terrible news for a lot of people. As I've said many times, it's a recession when your neighbor loses your job, but when you yourself lose your job, it's a depression. It becomes a depression, and we're seeing more and more job cuts, guys. We're seeing more job cuts continue to emerge. Last week, Bell announced that it's going to slash 9% of workforce, blames the government and the regulators. But regardless, about 4,800 jobs are going, including 750 contractors. So that is happening. You've also got Enbridge that is cutting jobs. So Calgary-based Enbridge to cut 650 jobs in effort to shrink costs. You would think they would be doing well, but no, they're not doing well at all. So they're going to be cutting more jobs. And not only that, guys, you've also got this. Is Canada in a baby bust? Again, we hit another all-time low in the country's fertility rate, which is now at 1.33. And with all the woke nonsense that you see in this country, it is no wonder that people don't want to have kids, because they don't want them to go into the education system and get brainwashed into God knows what. I mean, it's just crazy what is going on in this country, things we can't even discuss on this platform. But the thing you have to think is this fertility rate going to go up, or is it going to go down here? And what do you think is impacting this? Because the politicians and central planners are absolutely clueless, but it seems oh so simple in my mind that it's the cost of living, it's the standard of living, it's a sign of this country's demise, unfortunately, because the standard of living is really starting to unravel. And we're seeing this when you look at the wages. They're not keeping up with inflation, guys, which is a major thing that you need to happen. People are losing money. Their standard of living is dropping. It's collapsing, and it has collapsed massively over the past 4 years thanks to the government's intervention right here. They were a massive contributor to the inflation crisis. Not the only, but a massive contributor to the inflation crisis. And another thing we need to be mindful of is Canadians are not getting more productive. In fact, productivity, like I said, continues to go down. So this is, again, not a good sign for what is happening in the economy. And this chart, guys, I mean, wow. I just keep looking at this chart and thinking this is crazy, but it's something that I've been predicting on this channel for over 3 years now. And to some of us, like myself and like many of you guys, it was just blatantly obvious that this was going to happen, considering the amount of private debt that Canadian businesses owe. I mean, you only have to look at the amount of loans that were given to the private sector in Canada over the past couple of years. It has just exploded exponentially. And then you only have to look at private debt to GDP, which has also peaked like household debt to GDP. So again, not showing you that you're in a good place there either. So this economy is just sinking. It's sinking with a massive amount of debt, government debt, household debt, private business debt. It's all debt. And basically we don't have the growth anymore, and we're just running on fumes. And when that music stops, a lot of people are going to be stood around with nowhere to sit down. If you want to get around Trudeau's censorship laws, go to expressvpn.com/market mania. I would highly recommend that you watch this video and check it out right now. And I will see you in the next one. Take care.